Now, and the cup that would be used at Passover is a barakah cup. Barakah. It means blessing. When we start celebrating Holy Thursday, one of the Psalms is our blessing cup. Okay? Yes, all right. So, that barakah cup, blessing, and also the first words of blessing at a Passover meal would be Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam. Blessed are you, Lord God of creation. Now, that cup is often referred to as the cup of Elijah, because Elijah is supposed to return to introduce the Messiah. Hence the image of John the Baptist in all four Gospels. That's amazing. Also, the image of bridegroom is there too, because that cup would also be used at your wedding, at a marriage. The cup of Elijah. At a Passover meal, there must be an empty chair. There must be a minimum of 10 people. Why? Because God told Abraham that he would spare Sodom and Gomorrah if he could find 10 righteous people. And in Orthodox synagogues, a rabbi will have a list of people he can call, at a moment's notice to come to the synagogue. Because you cannot have a service, like if somebody dies, you cannot have a service unless you have 10 people. And in Memphis, we talk about ecumenism. Back in the days when we had several synagogues downtown, then of course you had St. Mary's, St. Peter's. By the original St. Bridget is where St. Jude Hospital is. A lot of people don't remember that. And you'd be surprised how many Catholic boys, the rabbis would be on the corner, bringing them into the temple. Okay, here's your yarmulke, here's a book, and they could have, and that 10 people, that's called a minyan. A minyan. If anybody's been with me to Israel, sometimes on a plane, you'll see for morning prayer, as the sun's coming up, you'll see a group of Orthodox that will go into the gallery somewhere to get 10 people, for the prayer. And so that cup is no ordinary cup. It's not one that you use every day. It's called the cup of Elijah. So it's a special thing. Even in the poorest home, that may be the only treasure a person had, was that cup. That's how important it is. And it has a prophetic meaning to it. The cup of salvation I will raise, I will call upon the Lord's name. Cup of salvation. So when they want to talk about poverty and get all kinds of images, of what the Holy Grail was like, well, I got news for you. It'd probably be the most important thing in your home because of what it symbolizes. More than something to drink from. But the cup of salvation I will raise. Now, we will go into the now. So keep this in mind, I said, with the Feast of Tabernacles. We're talking about the return of God's presence and the encounter. Now, everybody, can we get on to chapter 2 here? Okay. 2 important events are here. The wedding at Cana and the cleansing of the temple. Now, for our video audience, we will not have class next Monday. So if you're looking for this on YouTube, there's going to be a reason why you're not going to find class number 3 yet. Because of the campus here, it's this fall break, Columbus Day, etc. So the office is closed and there'll be nobody here to open up the building. All right, so, but you may need a break anyway. This is a lot of material to absorb and to try to feel again. So, it tells us, on the 3rd day, there was a wedding in Cana in Galilee. On the 3rd day? 3rd day from what? Okay. That's interesting. Sometimes I've wondered if it isn't like on the 3rd day he rose again. But we can assume this is the 3rd day after the encounter with Nathanael. Now, I tend to gravitate that this event takes place after the Feast of Tabernacles. This takes place maybe early October. Why do I think that? Well, it could be because many times weddings in ancient Israel took place after the Feast of Tabernacles. After the harvest, you know, the work is done, especially for the agrarian people. Okay, after the harvest, work is over with. We don't have to go out the fields anymore for a while. You can take a break. So very often, not in every case, mind you, of course not. But it was a typical time, you know, for weddings. Like how many of us, most weddings for some reason seem to be in June. You know, vacation time. Okay, got it, right? Right, so here in the agrarian situation, most of these were probably early October. Now, if you look at this, look at verse 11. Jesus did this as the beginning of his signs in Cana in Galilee, and so revealed his glory. His disciples began to believe in him. Now this is interesting. First of all, they have stone water jars. It tells you right there. 6 stone water jars there for Jewish ceremonial washing. Notice it's not just for drinking, but for ceremonial washing, or ritual washing. Not like the sink in our bathrooms, but rather ceremonial. This goes back to kosher laws. Also, so what happens, notice these dynamics. Jesus' mother goes to him. Jesus addresses his mother as woman. Now I got news for you. If I were to go to my mother's house, I think you get the image here, correct? All right? You know, the gospel is not something, you know, you got to feel these things. Come on. That's the trouble. We seem to turn the scriptures into stained glass windows that are bloodless. Yeah, what would happen if I, yeah. So what's going on? This is an important revelation. Because that word woman in Hebrew is Eva, Eve. Addressing her that way, it's a title. The mother of all humanity. You'll see this again from the cross. You will notice how I'm tying early events to the passion, correct? I want you to begin to notice that. There's a reason. The Gospel of John is making connections. And then it says, because Jesus provides the wine, this gives him the image as being the bridegroom. Jesus Christ becomes the celebrant. He is the bridegroom. He provides the wine. One of the images that we have of Jesus Christ that we don't focus on is the image of Jesus Christ as a bridegroom. This is a significant image in the early centuries of the church, especially with St. Augustine. His image is bridegroom. The one who has made and pledged himself in a covenant. Now, I'm look at my time here. I won't have enough time to go into cleansing of the temple. But I think that with the handout I gave in the Feast of Tabernacles, you'll understand a lot more. So we may be able to touch that before we run out of our time here. But now, again, I want to go back this image of Christ as the bridegroom. John says that this changing water into wine was the first of his signs. He doesn't call it a miracle. He calls it a sign. It is a miracle, but he has another title for it. It is a sign. It meaning that it is a revelation. In the Old Testament, no one could come to God directly. You cannot experience God directly. You could only encounter God indirectly and in terms of signs. To go on a journey and to begin to realize the hand of the Lord working in something. Not a direct experience, but an indirect. So signs, manifestations of the hand of God, is how one could approach. Again, I can tie this to the Passion. Repeating, in the Old Testament, one does not experience or encounter God directly, but only indirectly through signs, through symbols. Now look at the Last Supper, Gospel of John. He who sees me has seen the Father. Jesus Christ is the image of God. In the Old Testament, God has no face. But in the New Testament, God has a face. There is an image of God. That's the reason why we have, in the Incarnation, there is the redemption of the imagination. We have a crucifix. There is a statue, the Stations of the Cross. The redemption of the imagination. Now, also, this image of wedding. How does a wedding take place? Have you ever noticed how many parables Jesus gives about wedding banquets? Isn't that amazing? There's a reason why. Remember, John the Baptist in chapter 1 told us, I am not him, I am the best man. Isn't that fascinating? John the Baptist refers to himself as the best man. So what's going on? There's no such thing as going up to somebody's house, knock on the door, and somebody says, can I take Margaret out to the chariot races? You know, There is no dating, okay? There is no dating like we think of. What happened is the following. If you were interested in a woman, you would pick somebody to go to the father or the guardian, in case, father's deceased, and to make a case for your friend, hence the best man. He's the one who would talk about you, convince the father it's okay, let's give him a try. See how this works out. So after the best man told all of his lies about the other guy, his friend, to convince the father about he's a wonderful guy, you would be allowed to attend family gatherings, always supervised, to participate in things, okay? And if the future marriage turns out was approved, here's what happened. On a certain day, most often for some reason they picked a Wednesday, a marriage took place. You went to the father's house, and in the father's house are his brothers, relatives, and sons, and all men. Women may be somewhere else, and if it's a big house, maybe in a gallery overlooking this. The groom comes in with his father, if he's still alive, guardians, whatever, his brothers, his extended friends, his relatives, all men. And on a table in this room, on a table, there is the blessing cup. Also, a scroll with 3 seals is the wedding covenant, the marriage contract. No, the expectations the families have, etc., is all there. The bride, the groom comes in with a coin purse, puts the bag on the table. He picks up the cup and he drinks from that cup of wine. When he drank that cup, he's married. Yeah, just like that. He's married. They don't. Now, here's what happens. You're married, but guess what? You don't take your wife with you. You're married and you leave. You can't come back to claim your bride until you have finished building the home or the extension, whatever it is, where you're going to live together. Again, you can connect this with the last chapters of John, or the other Gospels, but especially John. Or here's St. Paul. You have been purchased at a great price. The church is called the bride of Christ. Pentecost, remember, was the day of espousal, the day that Israel became the bride of God. That image of bridegroom is so important. Not only that, agony in the garden. Father, if it's your will, let this cup pass from me. It's not the cup of suffering, cup of a marriage, a commitment of one's life. Again, Gospel of John. We can connect the wedding feast of Cana with the cross, the passion. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. I go to prepare a place for you. Again, that image. And I will return to get you. I will return for you. We do that every Mass, correct? Until he comes in glory, until he returns. And, so very important image. So at this particular time, we're going to bring a conclusion to our study. The next scene in the Gospel of John is the cleansing of the temple. Those words of Jesus that we're going to explore in detail at our next class. Destroy this temple and in 3 days I raise it up. And then it tells you, the evangelist will tell you, they did not understand this until after the resurrection, that the temple is his body. Jesus Christ telling you that the plan of the temple is a prophecy. He is the incarnation of the plan of how God will make his home among us. I would further point out that the Gospel of John gives us almost a year. The scream is, this temple's taken 46 years to build. And you're going to rebuild it in 3 days? Well, we know that Herod the Great began constructing the temple that winter of 27, 28, 27 BC. So you can get a date, a ballpark date of when this event took place, what year. And so we will continue. Said next week we'll go into the next session, more background and explanation of cleansing the temple, its prophetic meaning, and the encounter with Nicodemus. You will notice something. Jesus spends a whole night. I mean, this is one-on-one encounter. And this is, and Nicodemus, by the way, is a certifiable historical figure. We'll go into that the next session. So thank you all very much. If you want to come see the coins, they're on the table. Thank you very much, Jay.